Maurice Martin has been through his fair share of trauma, from masking the private pain of his childhood to battling depression in his 20s. After becoming an award-winning vocalist and songwriter, Maurice hit rock bottom, and it became clear that there was only one way out. Are you tired of being miserable and broken? Stay tuned to hear Maurice Martin's incredible story of healing and growth.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Maurice Martin had to let go of what had been holding him back. Now that he's healed, Maurice is on a mission to equip and empower you to release your limiting beliefs and become the person you were born to be. Welcome, Maurice.
Carol, thank you so much for bringing me on. I am just so excited about this conversation today for sure.
I'm the one that's excited, and I can't wait to hear your story. I have heard bits and pieces of it, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you're going to share with the audience today. So let's start with your childhood. Tell us that story.
Sure, absolutely. You know, it's interesting because I never know where to start the story of my childhood, but I sometimes start my childhood by telling the story about college. I was a freshman in college at Kent State University, and I'm sitting in a therapist's office, and I'll be honest, I was there because I'd been having some anger issues and some stress issues and some anxiety issues. And so this was now, several sessions in, and the therapist says, tell me more about your story of your life. Tell me more about your childhood. And I'm talking to her, and she stops me and she says, I'm sorry, I just have to cut you off. But you continue to tell a story about things, and you're using words like love and respect and discipline. She says, but I'm hearing stories of trauma and abuse. And she said, and I'm wondering what it will take for you to admit that your childhood was not okay. You hear that? It's just like,
yes, no kidding. What a shock.
Right. What a shock to me. I was like, did I say something wrong? What did I do to mislead you into thinking I've had a rough childhood? Right. And so, I often say I grew up, with my mother, and my mother actually was remarried. I should say she married the first time to my stepfather when I was 4. And so I didn't grow up with my biological father. And then my brother came along later. And during that time of my life, I thought that I just had strict but loving parents. And what I realized is that during some of those moments that were expressed to me as love, well, we only say this because we love you. I only do this because I love you. It's only this way because I love you and I'm willing to tell you the truth. That sometimes what I was experiencing was trauma, was abuse, was verbal abuse. I witnessed domestic violence in my home, and just different things that I experienced over the years. Not that my parents didn't do everything they could, to try to give me a great childhood. But sometimes the things that we face in life harm us without purpose, meaning they weren't purposed to try to hurt me. They didn't mean to hurt me. They weren't trying to hurt me and scar me and wound me. And yet those things did happen. And so as I look back on my childhood, I see the foundation of a person who I think had to go through rough moments so he could give voice now in life to other people who need to know you can overcome what you've been through in your past.
That's quite a statement.
I think everybody, and this is my particular worldview, that everybody comes here for a reason on earth. I don't know that everybody accomplishes it, but we call that thing purpose, right? And I believe that I'm here because as I overcome my past, I can then help other people overcome theirs. Sometimes we're defined by the imperfections of life. It's the screw ups, it's the things that we got wrong, or the things that people told us we'd never get through. It's the painful moments, the embarrassing moments, right? Those things tend to be how we look at ourselves. Someone will say, Carol, you're talented, you're great, you're gifted. You go, well, there's some things I've done in my life you weren't there for, right? We tend to
Exactly.
be hyper focused on the negatives. And I think that it's when we mature and heal in life that we learn the hard moments and the things that you've been through actually can develop your character. They can build your perseverance, and ultimately they can catapult you into purpose, where your heart is more on display as you help people, and you're more mindful of being everything you're meant to be, one helping hand at a time.
Well, you just put my whole life right there in those statements
Mm,
because the exact same thing I can relate to. And I so appreciate what you said. Sharing your past helps others share theirs. I always encourage people, and that is precisely why this podcast was born, for others to share their story of hopelessness turned to hope. So I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. Tell us how you got into your music career and whatever you'd like to share about that. I'm really excited to hear that.
Well, I've often said that music really, from the moment I was about 15 or 16, became my saving grace in many ways. I spoke a little bit about how, there was a lot of unkind words that were spoken in my home. Well, the music really taught me how to bury those sounds, the
Mm.
sound of what I would never do and what I'd never become and what I'd always screw up. The music gave me peace. It gave me meaning. It gave me love. I went to school and I studied music in college. And then after college, I really threw myself into my music career. I'll be honest, the initial time that I went to undergraduate did not end well. I had some life tragedies take place personally. And I felt like the only thing I have right now in my life is music. And so in my 20s, I began to play in a band called Winslow, and we played all over the US, and we had licensing deals with MTV and VH1 and the Discovery networks, and we're able to sign to a couple independent record labels. And so as I tell those types of stories, people kind of ooh and ah and think, amazing, right? Well, the reality was during that time in my life, I was broken. I mean, I was a very bitter, angry, frustrated human being. I was accomplishing things. I was standing in front of big audiences. I was moving forward in my career. I worked with, Emmy winners and Grammy winners and Rock and Roll Hall of Famers. It's incredible the stories that I have. And yet I was checked out for a lot of it, meaning checked out emotionally, not really present, thinking about other things, feeling anxious, feeling overwhelmed. And so by the time I got to about age 29, age 30, my music had all but kind of fizzled out. My band kind of fell
Hmm.
apart. And, it was one of those things where I certainly could have kept going, right? And I could have, tried to reinvent myself as a solo artist. And I put out a song and that was used by the ABC network in Cleveland. And, it was the theme song of one of their TV shows. And still was having some success. And yet, I felt like enough was enough. Like I was just at the end of my rope and I needed to find myself and find my way. So, I wrap up that story about music by saying I thought music could replace everything in my life that was missing. I thought it could give my life meaning and give my life worth and give my life all those things. I thought music could confirm my life was worthwhile. And what I found was that there is no replacement for healing and growing and learning that you yourself are enough no matter what you're doing. It's not about the accomplishments. It's about looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing the worth and the value without doing anything else. And that was really the greatest lesson I learned as I ended up kind of phasing out of that season of my life and into the next things.
I'd like you to repeat that last part again. No replacement for.
No replacement for looking in the mirror and seeing the value and the worth that is staring back at you. There is nothing more important than that. This podcast, I'm happy to be doing it. It doesn't define you. It doesn't define me, because your meaning and your worth have already been established in the world. We're just sharing it with other people, right? And that was the lesson for me.
What was the style of music?
Sure, I was a soul singer. I often say it was soul with some funk and a bit of rock, depending on the sound and depending on the song.
And now, is it the same?
Now, the only music that I really make is more like prayer and meditation music. And so I tend to sit down and sit with, strings and pads and synthesizers and just create atmospheres now. So I do a lot of different things with music than I used to.
How do you publish that?
Whenever I do, I release stuff on iTunes or on YouTube.
Okay,
So there's actually I have a series of pieces of music that I put out on YouTube last year that I called Sleep Music for the Soul. And it's basically music that you can either rest to or that you can pray to, that just brings a sense of relaxation to you.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. Now, my next question is, we're going to switch gears here a little bit and talk about how what you have learned can help the audience. How do you say goodbye to what is weighing you down?
Such a good question. As you can imagine, I reached the end of that music career. And if you think about it, I was defined by my music career, right? As you're making accomplishments, the only thing I knew about Maurice was he was a musician. And I used to tell people that, Maurice, who are you? A musician. Yeah. But outside of that, that's it. That's all I got. Literally, that was my answer. And so at some point, I reached a breaking point where I feel like I completely broke. Alcohol picked up. Other bad habits picked up. And I found myself lost and alone and isolated. And I was burning bridges left and right. Friends were leaving. Family members were leaving. And I was just alone. And I realized at that point that not only did I have to deal with that current situation and, how my music career had ended, but it was bigger than that. It was time for me to face my past, face my childhood, face some of the things that I witnessed, some of the things that I experienced. And so as I began to heal, I had to ask myself a question that I think many people in your audience ask themselves. Is it really possible for me to get better? I know some people can. But can I? Am I one of those people? And I often say the answer is a resounding yes. If you're willing to face what you've been fearing, if you're willing to stand and stare at what you've been running from, and over time, you will find the very healing you're looking for, but you have to face it and you have to go slow because nothing happens overnight.
A success story. Can you give us one?
Sure, absolutely. I have so many success stories. I remember I was working at a facility as a counselor, and there was a guy. He was in time number 15 or 16, and he's sitting in a room and he's talking, and usually his talking was very monotone, and he kind of had a tinge of anger with everything he said. And he said, at the end of the day, I drink because I like to drink. I drink because I don't know what else to do. I drink because it is what it is, and it's never going to change. And I looked at him and I said, so when are you going to face it? And he said, face what? And I said, the reason you're angry. I said, there is so much pain in there. When will you face it? He said, it's not pain. I just like to drink. And I stared him in his eyes and I said, I'm looking in your eyes and I can see your soul.
Right.
And I can see in this moment, you are in pain. When will you face it? And he begins to tear up. And it was almost like he was allergic to his own tears. Like he had no idea what was happening to his face. Right. And he says, I don't even do this, but I don't know how to face it. And I said, well, the first thing we need to do is establish, what is it? What is the pain? What is it that you're feeling? What is it? I remember I was in my office and he called me. He had reached 6 months of sobriety. Another set of tears was in his eyes that day. And he said, Maurice, he said, my life is not perfect. I'm still figuring out how to be the new version of me. He said, but I need to say thank you that I can feel now. And thank you that I can at least face things. And I know I'm worth it.
Talk about a success story.
That's it.
That's complete about face.
That's
Yes.
it.
Do you have another one you'd like to share?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, my favorite success story is me, right?
Exactly.
And all I mean by that is that the reality is I don't look like what I've been through. 2016, I was 32 years old. I call that my rock bottom year. In the previous year that led up to that, I had lost a job I really cared about, and then I had two brothers pass away in a year.
Oh my
One,
goodness.
yeah, and so it was just a year of a lot of grief and pain and just like trying, oh, life, what are you doing to me, right? I remember that you talked about hopelessness earlier. There were these nights where I would just lay in bed and I would just say, I don't want to wake up anymore. I don't want to do this
Hmm.
anymore. If there's any way I can just go to sleep and not wake up, that'd be great. And so my transformation was fast and slow at the same time. You know, my rock bottom moment, the first one I had was before my second brother died, and I was in a car feeling suicidal, driving down the highway, thinking about running my car off the road. And I'll never forget that I began to pray. But my prayer did see that sounded like really deep and spiritual. What I mean was I started cussing and swearing at the thing that I thought might be God, right? That
Hmm.
if you're real, why is my life this way, right? And I felt like I heard something that day for the first time. Like something that I was praying to heard me. And that sounds kooky and crazy when you say things like that out loud sometimes, but for me, it ended my suicidal moment and my moment of rage, and it gave me hope for the first time really in my life. And after that moment, I began to pursue peace and pursue growth. I got into therapy. I began to really go after spiritual health. I began to read books. I just went after getting better. And it was one day at a time. I say I had a miracle moment, but the true miracle is that the moment didn't stop.
Good point.
Right? Some people are looking for a miracle moment. And one thing I often say, and I'll say this to everybody listening today, don't just wait for a miracle moment to happen, because the miracle is that you still have another moment. That is the miracle, right? That's it.
Well stated.
So I think that for me, I'm still a work in progress, one day at a time, facing my past, embracing my moment, working towards my future. Every year I find something new that I still haven't healed from, or that still is overwhelming me, or that still brings me down time to time. And I see myself as a work in progress. But the beauty is that because I know that progress is possible, I can help a lot of other people at the same time.
And that is your bottom line.
That's it.
Now, we're going to take a quick 15-second break, and when we come back, I want you to share with the audience your 7 embrace strategies, the balance of hope. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Welcome back, Maurice, and as I stated on the top, we would like to hear now about your 7 embrace strategies, the balance of hope.
Absolutely. So my 7 strategies are really things that I've learned not only from my own personal journey of healing, but also as I began to counsel people, and then I started life coaching, and I've been speaking for years now. And so there's these principles that I learned on the way that have really been not only fundamentally changing for me, but for some others as well. And the first one is what I call the principle of evaluating your story. It's important for us to know that we all have a story we believe about our lives. Now, I pointed that I said we believe about our lives because what you believe may or may not be all the way real and all the way true. Sometimes people have said things to us, done things to us. We've done things to ourselves or to others that can cloud our judgment and our understanding of our lives. And so when you really understand who you believe you are, what you believe you're here for, and what you believe is happening to in your life, you can start asking other questions like, which chapter am I in? Maybe I'm not at the end of my story. Instead, what if I'm in the middle of my story and there's some chapters left? And no, there's some things didn't go well in the last couple of chapters, but it can get better, right? It can improve. So the first principle is evaluate your story. The second one is called the marathon mindset. And it simply says, in this world where everybody's chasing after miracle moments that are microwavable, right? I just want to just spin around and click my heels 2 times and say there's no place like home and I want to be better. The reality is that type of a mindset will often leave you lacking and broken, right? We've all been there. We tell ourselves, I'm over that. I'm past that. I'm not worried about that anymore. The reality is what we've learned how to do is to stuff our problems and not deal with them. We're trying to race to solutions and race to get over things. And really, we never really get over them. And anything that you don't get over eventually gets over on you. Right?
That's quite the statement.
Isn't it? Things that you don't get a grasp on in your life will keep a grasp on you. And so the mentality is, let's face our problems one day at a time over time. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I need to get to the finish line, but I need to be better when I get to the finish line. I need to know that I know this is a TikTok culture, an Instagram culture, make me laugh and make me happy in 30 seconds. But real transformation takes years, takes months, takes decades, right? And so it's just embracing that this is going to take a while, but it's worth it. The third of my principles is called the balance of hope. And it's a simple one, and yet it's complex. It says, hope exists now. Sometimes people say, someday, if I can just accomplish this thing, if I can just make things happen, then my life will transform. You've been there. I've been there, right? Well, the problem with that is I call it the hope disease, right? You never really get fulfilled, and it keeps you diseased. You find yourself saying, well, I got what I wanted. Now what's next? Now I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
I still need more. I gave my story, right? I heard my music on the radio. I got a chance to open for big artists. I played in front of 10,000 people. I got a chance to make music, I believe. But nothing was ever enough because the finish line is always moving, always changing. The balance of hope says, I need to embrace the fact that hope exists now. Not in the future, not in this magical, mythical moment when everything will change, but that real change is happening now. Real miracles are happening now. Real growth is happening now. In this conversation, right? If we're open to it, and you and I have got to a place in our own journeys, we're open, right? I have a feeling when you get on an interview, you think to yourself, I can get something out of this today. I can evolve or learn today. It's the hope that this moment is enough. And if you stack enough of now moments together that have hope and faith and growth in them, you'll find you wake up one morning and you're everything that you always dreamed and prayed of being. But it didn't happen in a magical moment. It happened one day at a time. That's the balance of hope. The fourth principle is called the realist you. And the realist you says, we've all been through trauma, drama, and pain in our lives. We've been through tragedies. We've been through heartbreaks. And anything that you have not healed from in your life begins to bury the real you. So now when people meet me, they meet my trauma responses. They meet my barriers that I've put up around myself to protect myself. They've met my coping skills. But when you sit down and ask most adults, who are you? They go, heck if I know. And so that means you're going to have to figure out, who are you? Who is that person that was put on this earth to do great things? Do you know you? Does your family know you? Do your friends know you? Do your
Mm-hmm.
employees know you? Right? And so the realist you says, you're worth getting to know, but you're going to have to remove some layers of what it is that has happened to you and grow through that so that the real you can emerge. That's the realist you. The next one, and I hope nobody's overwhelmed by these, but to me these are such
Yes,
powerful
yes.
tools, right? The next one is simple. Some people won't like it. It's the easiest one. Action. Action. You cannot just say you want to get better. You must move in the direction of
Right,
the things you
right.
say you want. Easy enough. It takes action. The next one is courage in the face of fear. People often want to say, I see people wearing t-shirts and I'm fearless, I'm fearless, I'm fearless.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as fearless, okay? Every person has to interact with fear at some point in their life. And so the reality is I must find courage in the face of fear. I must feel fear
Excellent.
and move anyway. And grow anyway and evolve anyway. Yeah, I'm scared. But this some fear is good for you. You're supposed to be scared
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And yet, I will not let the fear, excuse me, I will not let the fear define me.
Right.
That's it. So that's courage. And my final principle, principle number 7 is everything you need, you have. It
Oh,
is
I
the
can attest to that.
right
Mm-hmm.
that again today you are who you are and you have who is in your life in your life. You have whatever resources are available today. And if you understand that we must learn how to look at our life as though we already have abundance. Sometimes we look at our lives and we just look at the lack. Oh, I don't have this yet. And I wish more people were around for that. And I wish I had these numbers and I wish I had these accomplishments. And we're wishing away the moment. But the reality is you already have greatness in you. You already have beauty in you. You already have gifts, what I like to call superpowers. You already got superpowers on the inside of you. And if only you would see that everything you're meant to be today is already there, you would stop looking at yourself as though you're not good enough. And you would start saying, how do I leverage how good I am to make an impact today? And that's my 7 principles.
Very well stated. I really appreciate that, and well, we will have that on the webpage as well, of course. You have been an inspiration, and you certainly have been a motivator. So let us continue now and talk about your book. Now, when I read the title, I did what do they call it when you catch yourself and you go back? Whatever that word is. I
I would
don't
have said catch myself and go back. So
Okay,
I
there
don't.
you go. That's what I did. So I looked at it again. There you go. And when the title is Your Butt is Too Big, Say Goodbye to Dead Weight. And I thought, butt is spelled differently than the way you see it the first time you read it.
Mhm.
So now I want you to tell us about your book.
Sure. So I already really hinted at it because all those 7 principles are in the book. So the concept is we find ourselves saying, well, Carol, I would have already been working in that direction, but you got to understand. Well, Carol, I would have been healing by now, but if you only had seen what I've been through.
Hmm.
And we find ourselves saying but instead of pursuing what we say we want before that but, right? And what we need to learn is think about food for a second. This is an easy analogy. Whatever I eat, whatever I consume in my life, my body then has to process. Now, once my body begins to process that food, it's supposed to give me energy. It's supposed to do great things for me. But sometimes I consume things that are harmful for me. And instead of my body consuming those things and then passing them through, it becomes dead weight that sticks to me. It weighs me down. It can affect my heart. It can affect the way that I move and the way that I interact and live. And life events work in the same way. What you've been through in your life that you have not healed from or grown
Hmm.
through becomes the
Hmm.
dead weight that you carry with your life into your journey. And now I find that because I was hurt when I was 10, because I was heartbroken when I was 5, because someone left me and lied to me when I was 21, now I fail to have the courage and I say, I want to do
Hmm.
these things,
Hmm.
but I want to live, but. And so the concept is your butt is too big. And so now what you need to do is heal so you can stop looking backwards at the big things that haven't
Wow.
healed and start looking towards destiny.
What an impactful statement. And I encourage everyone who is listening today to get a copy of your book. I think it appeals to everyone listening. I don't, isn't that true? It's for everybody. There's not a distinct audience that this is for. This
Yeah,
is for
that's
everybody.
I kind of think the same thing, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably biased, right?
A little bit.
Now one thing I will say, there's a lot of scriptures in it, and so there may be some people who are listening today who maybe don't want to see scriptures within the reading. But when I always think about one thing one of my friends said to me, he did not think he had that much trauma or that much pain in his past. Okay, and so his words were, "I bought your book because I wanted to be a good friend," and he called me on the phone and he said, and I quote, "I thought I was going to begin reading your book, but your book started reading me."
I love it. Oh my
Right.
goodness.
And that has been the experience I've heard from so many people, is that I'm very transparent and real in my book. I don't try to sound like a subject matter expert. I try to sound like a human being living life, having revelation moments and sharing the revelation that I've had. And so there's something very relatable in that. If you're a human, you've gone through some things that you may not have dealt with. And when you're willing to acknowledge that, then you'll have to work on it and fix it and get over it. And so I think that that's a story that's for everybody. I think that teenagers can benefit from that, and 30 somethings and 60 somethings and 70 somethings and black, white, green, yellow, purple. We all have been through life, and we all want to get to the other side of it.
I've never met a purple person.
I have I don't know. I've had some white friends who, when they get sunburned, you know what I mean? It's like pinkish,
Okay.
purplish, reddish, you know what I mean?
Or
I don't
if they're drinking too much, they'll get that purple nose, right?
That's it. Purple lips. I've seen purple lips, so I don't know.
Okay. All right. Now you made a statement that I would like to read, and I would like you to expound on that before we close, and that is this. Faith was at the center of my healing. Faith gave me the courage to face my past and a renewed perspective to show me my real identity. I learned that my trauma didn't have to continue to define me and leave me empty. Faith, paired with healthy habits, continues to mature and healthily grow me.
I was wondering where that came from and who said it. Uh, here's reality for me. I think about my life and I think how hopeless I was, how broken I was. And what I thought was, I am broken. My brokenness was an identity, right? I wore it like a badge of honor. Well, you just have to know that I'm a broken individual, that I am depressed, that I am anxious, and I'm probably going to be this way for the rest of my life. Those I am statements were overwhelming because all of the things that were negative that I'd been through or experienced were defining me. Faith taught me, Maurice, did you ever consider the fact that something greater than you had something greater for you in mind? I'm going to say that again. Did you ever consider the thought that something greater than you had something greater for you in mind? And what if you healed from what you've been through? You grew, you matured, you were able to take some of the open wounds and turn them to scars, reminders of what you've been through, but no longer bleeding out on the world. What would happen? And I was able to learn one faith-filled step at a time that there's a whole bunch of other people who are where I've been. And I've learned that I can put things into words that other people have been searching for the words for. Right? That's the gift. I think that's the greatest gift I have. That I say something and people go, oh my God, that's what I've been feeling.
Excellent.
I promise you, and this is the last thing I'll say about that. I remember there's a company called the Christian Authors Network, and they're booking my my podcast tour. And I remember Coach Tam, she says, Maurice, in your bio, we need to talk about your trauma. And I said, no, we don't. Let's just talk about everything great that I've accomplished. And she said, Maurice, that's not the journey you're on. The journey is you have to tell people right up front, you've been through some things. And so when I get onto these interviews and I pour my heart out, it is scary. It's frightening. But I'm learning that I went through things for more than me.
That's right.
Right? And that is the greatest lesson that I learned. And for everybody's listening, you went through some of the things you went through for more than you. And as you grow, other people will benefit from your healing.
That's a perfect summary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maurice, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope. You certainly have been an inspiration to me. I've taken notes, they're all over the place, and I know that you have been an inspiration to the audience. So, audience, please, after you hear this, get connected with Maurice. Buy his book, share it with others, listen to this more than once because there is a lot of meat in this broadcast, and I really sincerely appreciate what you shared from your heart today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.